Are you as outraged as I am about the gift that Qatar is about to give to Donald Trump, a $400 million 747 for his personal use? It's disguised as a gift to the Department of Defense during his term of office for his use, but then it's going to be transferred to his library. Ha ha, his library. He won't have one because he doesn't read books. And so it is a personal gift or just out and out a bribe. It's certainly a violation of the Emoluments Clause of the United States Constitution. And the facts are so terrible that you should be paying attention to this and be as outraged as I am. Not only does it violate the Emoluments Clause, it violates the bribery laws of America. And it was approved by a former lobbyist to the Qatar government, our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, whose conflict of interest in issuing such an opinion is completely outrageous, but completely reflective of her loyalty to Donald Trump. Please follow this issue and make sure that you vote Democratic to get rid of the Congress that is allowing this to happen. Did you know that in addition to violating the Emoluments Clause and the bribery laws of America and the conflict of interest laws that Pam Bondi has, as well as Donald Trump, in addition, there's an immunity issue with the gift from Qatar of a $400 million plane. There are two actual other issues. One is the safety and security because a foreign government is making this gift to the president, and it's going to take millions of dollars in retrofitting to make it secure communications-wise. And whether our people will ever find all of the bugs that the Qatar government may have put into this plane to listen to all of the most intimate conversations of our president is certainly open to question. But then don't forget, even though it violates the bribery laws of America, it can't be prosecuted for two reasons. One, because Pam Bondi won't prosecute any violations by Donald Trump or any other Republican, but also because the Supreme Court, for no reason at all, granted immunity to the president for his official conduct. And while I might argue and will argue that taking a bribe is not part of his official conduct and should not be subject to any of the immunity granted by the Supreme Court, I'm not the Supreme Court, and they may see it differently. So we are in a dangerous situation. It also raises the issue of whether immunity would be extended to anyone who works for him who gets involved in this. It shouldn't, but it might, and even if it doesn't officially belong to his underlings, he will pardon them. So no one will be prosecuted. The Department of Justice won't prosecute. The immunity might extend to his underlings. The immunity may or may not apply because I don't think this is a legitimate use of his presidential powers, but it's raising really bad issues. It's something that you must let your members of Congress know you disapprove of and that you will vote your conscience and will not vote for anyone who allows this to happen. So members of Congress, take note and start taking action. We must protect our democracy, and this is really threatening us. Okay, let's talk habeas corpus. I am genuinely frightened, and I want to make sure that you know about the threat to suspend habeas corpus. It's fancy Latin words, but basically it is the right of anyone who is detained to go to a court and say, please release my body. I didn't do anything wrong. I need a hearing. Well, habeas corpus can be suspended by Congress. That's what the Constitution says. It's not by the president, but it's the president who's threatening to do this through his mouthpiece, Stephen Miller, one of the most conservative people alive today. And it would mean, as they are saying it, they're talking about for immigrants. But if they can suspend it to oust immigrants without a hearing, immigrants who may not actually even be here illegally, they may be here on a student visa, on a green card, on a pending citizenship application. So you're taking away the right of people to pursue asylum or citizenship by saying, no, we're ousting you without any hearing, no due process. But if they can do that to immigrants, habeas corpus applies to American citizens. You could be deported. We don't know that any of the people who are now serving in El Salvador or potentially who are going to be sent to Libya, whether they are immigrants, whether they're Venezuelans, whether they're from some other country, whether they have committed any crime, whether they are on a pending asylum claim, because there's been no due process. No court has reviewed evidence. The government has not put forward any proof that these people should be deported. And that's really frightening. But due process and habeas corpus suspension is even worse. When you suspend habeas corpus, anyone can be arrested, detained, and you could be sent to Libya, a place, by the way, that the State Department says no American should travel to. It's too dangerous. So they're going to send people who were here on our premises, subject to our laws, subject to the rights that our Constitution grants them, subject to due process, who are going to be denied that. Courts have said, no, you can't use the Enemy Aliens Act. And I think the courts will once again say, and you can't suspend habeas corpus. That would require an invasion. The courts have already said no invasion in terms of the Alien Enemy Act. And I'm sure they will say the same thing. There is no invasion. This would be like declaring martial law and giving the president all the powers that he wants. This is terrifying to me. It should scare you too. It should motivate you to action. And I grew up in an era where public protest made a difference, and I believe it can here too. So please join all the protests that are coming up. There's another one in June. And I hope you've already participated, but that you will not give up. Keep participating. Keep writing to members of Congress. Keep letting people know. Write letters to the editor. Write op-eds. Those are effective ways to get your views known. Post on social media. Write to me on any of my social media accounts and tell me what you're thinking, and then I will talk about it more on Just the Facts. I want to share with you two things that are making me really angry. One is the arrival today of white South Africans who are being welcomed as refugees because they are subject to discrimination in their home country. At the same time that Donald Trump has announced that no Afghans should be allowed to remain here on temporary protective status. These are people who fought alongside our soldiers. These are people who interpreted for our military forces. These are people who are at dramatic risk if they return to Afghanistan. Donald Trump is saying, well, Afghanistan is now safe. That is not true. That's a lie. That is just not true. These people fought with us and deserve our protection. They should not be deported. Children born here, oh, well, that's another subject, but the children of Afghans who were born here are U.S. citizens. They cannot and should not be deported. And by the way, the argument's coming up next week, actually this week, the argument coming up this week about birthright citizenship should alarm you, that the government is actually arguing that the Constitution that says anyone born here is a U.S. citizen, it doesn't mean what it says. I'll delve into that later in a different segment. But for now, just be aware that white South Africans are being viewed as refugees and Afghanis are not. And that is really terrible. The same is true for Syrians, who he is saying it's now safe back in Syria in a government led by a former head of al-Qaeda. But that's okay. And so he wants to deport those people. That outrages me. It really, really does. Many of you have written to me about when is it time to leave federal government service? And that's a very tricky question. I faced that question during Watergate when Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor, was fired, and when it was still unclear whether all of the team had been fired or just Archie. We thought we should resign in protest, but Archie said, no, as long as you can do your job, you should stay, because otherwise you're giving President Nixon exactly what he wants. You go away and the case goes away. I would say the same thing to federal employees, as long as you can do your job. But I see now that it is almost impossible for you to honestly do the work that you signed up to do. Many of you are telling me that you are being required to say and do things in court that you simply know are false and that aren't what you signed up for. I hate to see you leave, because you and I both know that you will be replaced by someone who will do the bidding of Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel. And that is really a shame. But you have to stick to your moral high ground and do what is right. Many of you have also asked, when is it time to leave the country? When do I know? I just saw a play called Prayer for the French Republic, which deals mostly with anti-Semitism in France now and during the war, World War II. But it really did raise the broader question of, when is it time for you to leave the country that you know and love, the country that is your home? And sometimes you may get to the point where you can no longer fight for your freedoms and protect everyone, and it may be time to leave. Now is not, in my opinion, the time to leave America. We still have time to fight. I want you to join me in knowing the facts and fighting for the truth and fighting for our democracy. It isn't too late to save what we have. Of course, it's really important in less than 2 years at the midterms to make sure that we oust the Congress, House and Senate, that is allowing Donald Trump to do everything that you have to say to yourself, how the hell is he getting away with this? It's really ridiculous. Thank heavens the courts have so far stood up to him, but they need your support. America needs your support. Keep at it.